Hey YouTube, how's it going? Dustin Smith here with A2K, Allegiance to the King, and today we're going to be asking the question, what are the dead doing in their state of death? Are the dead conscious? Are the dead alive in some sense, praising God or looking down upon other people? What does the Bible have to say on this particular issue? Well, the Bible actually has a lot to say about the state of those who have died and what they are doing, or as we're going to see, what they aren't doing. Okay, let's start in Ecclesiastes chapter 9. It's a great place to start in asking the question, what the dead are doing in their state of death. Ecclesiastes chapter 9 and verse 5, a good place for us to start. It says, "For the living know that they will die, but the dead do not know anything." I'm going to read that again. The dead do not know anything. Okay? The dead don't know anything, okay? Because they're not thinking. There seems to be no activity taking place for those people who have died, okay? And here the contrast here is that those who are alive, they know what's going on, but those who are dead, they do not know anything. And the passage goes on and it says that they no longer have any remembrance. They're not doing any thinking. They have no memory that is taking place within their minds. Let's look down in verse 10, still in the same chapter, Ecclesiastes chapter 9 and verse 10. This says, "Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might." Why? "For there is no activity or planning or knowledge or wisdom in Sheol where you are going." Okay? We learn a lot about this passage. In verse 10, we learned that Sheol is the place where you go when you die. Sheol is the Hebrew word for the grave, the place where people go when they die, whether they're righteous or unrighteous. We also learn here that when people die, in Sheol, where they're going, there is no activity, there's no planning, there's no knowledge, and there's no wisdom, okay? There's no activity in Sheol. That's what this passage is saying, just like we saw in verse 5, because the dead do not know anything. They are unconscious. They are asleep. They are completely unconscious, and their next moment of consciousness will be when they are made alive, when they are raised from the dead, okay? But while they are dead, they have no sense of what is taking place. No activity, no planning, no knowledge, no wisdom. Very clear there. Okay? Let's look in the book of Psalms. The book of Psalms has a lot to say about the state of the dead, which is something that you might not naturally think when you're looking at the hymn book of the Israelites. Psalm chapter 6 and verse 5 has David saying, "There is no mention of you in death. In Sheol, who will give you thanks?" Okay, that's Psalm 6 and verse 5. Here David is saying that in death and in Sheol, nobody is giving mention of God. And in Sheol, who is giving God thanks? And it's a rhetorical question, meaning nobody, because there's no activity in Sheol. Very clear there. There's no giving of mention of God in Sheol, and nobody is giving thanks to God there. Sheol there is, of course, defined as the place of death. That's when people die, they are in Sheol. But here, no activity in Sheol, very clear. Let's stay in the book of Psalms and move to Psalm 30. Psalm 30. And let's look at Psalm 30 and verse 9, where the Psalm of David says, "What profit is there in my blood if I go down to the pit? Will the dust praise you? Will it declare your faithfulness?" Okay? Notice here that he says that I, not just his body or his soul or spirit or anything like that. He's saying him as a full collective self. He is going down to the pit. He is going down to the dust. And then he says, is the dust going to praise you? Is it going to declare your faithfulness? And the point is, no, it's not. Because when people die, there is no activity in death. There's no activity for those who are sleeping in the dust of the ground. Notice here that they are going down to the pit. This is David himself going down to the pit. This is not about going to hell, and it's definitely not going up to heaven. This is about people going down to the grave, going down to the dust, going down to the pit. And it's very clear here with the rhetorical questions. Nobody's going to be praising God there, and nobody is going to be declaring God's faithfulness. That is Psalm 30 and verse 9. Let's look one more passage. The very next Psalm, Psalm 31, we'll look in verse 17. Psalm 31 and verse 17 says, "Let me not be put to shame, O Lord, for I call upon you. Let the wicked be put to shame. Let them be silent in Sheol." Okay, let the wicked be silent in Sheol. Okay, so we learn there that when people are dead, they're in Sheol. That's again that word for the grave, the word for the dust. That's where everybody goes, the righteous and the unrighteous, when they die. But it says here that they will be silent. Why is that? Because we've already seen that there's no planning or knowledge or activity or wisdom in Sheol where people are going. The dead do not know anything. There is nobody praising God. There is no faithfulness. That's because dead people are actually dead. They're dead. They're not alive. They're not thinking. They have no life in them. That is why they need to be made alive at the moment of the resurrection. So hopefully this video has encouraged you in understanding what the Bible actually has to say about the state of the dead. We have seen in 5 passages, count them, 5 of them, that the dead are unconscious. They're in the grave, they're in Sheol, and there's no activity that is taking place when somebody dies. Their next moment of consciousness will be at the resurrection when they are made alive, and that is when their activity will resume. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share for more videos from Allegiance to the King. My name is Dustin Smith. I'm with A2K, and until next time, take care.